Welcome to Ayurveda and Spirituality with your host, Alakananda Ma, a renowned Ayurvedic expert and a graduate of a top London medical school. She is the principal of Alundi Ayurveda Gurukula, a unique apprenticeship-style school in Boulder, Colorado. She is a spiritual mother, teacher, flower essence maker, and storyteller. Join us as we uncover the timeless principles of Ayurveda, discover practical tips for enhancing vitality, and explore the deeper dimensions of spirituality that intertwine with the ancient science of life. Today on the podcast, we are sharing a recording from the archives.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk this morning about food. Where does it come from? How do we prepare it? How do we eat it? What is the meaning and the sacredness of food? So normally in my talks I use a 4 ages model, and I hope that everyone will be able to make it tomorrow when I'll give, it's like my basic introductory talk to the whole flow of the teachings that I'm sharing, and we will present that 4 ages model and how the mother is awakening in this time. However, when we're talking about food, we have to look even further back. So usually we're talking about 4 ages: the age of Aquarius, which we're just moving into, the age of Pisces, which we've been going through the 2,000 years, the age of Aries, when all of our texts and law books that our civilizations are founded on were written, the age of Taurus, the age of the great sacred dairies and city-states, the Bronze Age. When we're talking about food, we've got to look further back to the age of Cancer, schematically 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, or 6,000 to 4,000 BC. I hope I have that right. That the age of Cancer has to do with the concerns of cancer, and the age of Cancer had to do with gaining control over the production of our food. So prior to the age of Cancer, for untold millennia, we lived as hunter-gatherers, really originally as gatherers. Before the Ice Age, my understanding that we lived as gatherers, not so much hunters. There were plenty of fruits and roots and small beings like grasshoppers to eat. We didn't have to really learn to hunt. My understanding is that it was the Ice Age that drove us to hunting, and we actually hunted woolly mammals to extinction, which shows that not even hunter-gatherers are necessarily ecologically minded, much as we tend to see that in some of today's Native American tribes, that their teachings are very ecologically conscious. So what happened in the age of Cancer is we stopped depending on what presents itself to us, that the food that we meet as we walk around during our day, and we get control over the production of our food. And we begin farming. It's said that it was women that started this farming process. And I have this theory that men have never forgiven women for taking them away from the hunt, and that's why women have been so oppressed ever since, because they made that big problem long ago of deciding that we could build houses and live in them and domesticate grains and ultimately animals too. So this is when we actually begin to dominate our environment. Before we're very much living on, in the sense of really in the moment, and whatever food presents itself to us, that's what we're going to have. There was no menu plan, much as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm always trying to get my patients to make meal plans for the week. For millennia, we lived with, our menu plan was, we'll see what the gods offer for food today, and that's what we're going to eat. And now we're getting into the grains thing, and we're getting into cultivation, and it's starting to change our whole relationship with food, because now we can store food, we can trade in food grains. Actually, even back in Paleolithic days, there was a trade in salt between Siberia and all the way across Europe and into Britain. Even very, very ancient people were trading in salt. But now we're starting to accumulate food grains. We've got something that's ours, something to protect, something to defend. So we can see how we're starting to have this relationship with food that also has to do with owning, controlling, changing the earth, changing the landscape, dominating things. It's very interesting. And this goes way, way back. And ever since that day, we've started to relate to food from our heads, rather than from this very simple feeling of what are the gods going to offer to eat today. Now, back when I was a sadhu in India, it again was similar to the hunter-gatherer mode. As a sadhu, you don't have a meal plan. Your meal plan is you take your bath, you do your meditation, get out on the road, and someone will give you something. A piece of bakari, a mango, some rice, whatever it is, and you eat what you're given, and you feel grateful for it, and then you go on. You go your way. Again, it was that very simple relationship to food. Nowadays, our relationship with food has become incredibly more complex. Now, another very important piece of how we understand food has to do with how we relate to the mother. And again, we'll talk about this in more depth tomorrow, but to basically summarize that 4,000 years ago, at the start of the age of Aries, we made a break with the mother. And the way we did this in the religions of the Middle East, and which have spread all the way into the West, was a very abrupt and violent break. It said, the seed of the woman shall crush the serpent's head. Now the serpent is the symbol of Shakti, of the power of the woman. If the offspring of the woman, the son, is going to come forth and crush the serpent's head, this is meaning the power of the mother has been overthrown. We have turned our backs on the Shakti. For many thousands of years before that time, our main image of worship was the terracotta figurines of the mother, with the large breasts and the big belly. And it is told in the Talmud that when Abraham received the revelation of the one God, it's told that his father was an idol maker, which means that he made these figurines of the mother from the fertility cults, and that Abraham went into his father's shop and he shattered all the idols that his father had made, and then he went forth out of the land in which he was born into the land that had been promised to him. That's a very interesting story, and I think it's really contains a profound truth that we did at that time shatter our image of the mother. So in many of the talks that I give, we're picking up these shards from these images of the mother, these different terracotta shards. We have to put this image back together, but not to make the same image that we had before, back in that long ago time, but to make something new. What has happened is that we've disrupted our relationship with the mother and all that she represents. That has to do with our bodies. It has to do with money. It has to do with our sexuality, relationships, love, how we relate to women as a gender, and it certainly has to do with food. The basic substance of the mother. Everyone received their first food at their mother's breast. So when we disrupt our relationship with the mother, we come into a dysfunctional relationship to food. So that happened 4,000 years ago. Since then we've lived through 2 masculine ages. A vast period of time when the masculine has been overly dominant and the feminine has not had a voice. That's not to say that either the masculine or the feminine is better. And it's not to say that either men or women are better. I'm not meaning to say that, just saying as soon as you have that imbalance, like I was talking with Dr. Bill yesterday, that if you have a meeting or a group where it's nearly all women and no men or not enough men, it's going to be a lot of yak, 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 and poke, 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 poke. And it's not going to be functional. If you have a group or a board or a meeting that's mostly men, it's going to be a lot of horns clash, and it's not going to be functional. You actually have to have both genders. Why isn't Congress functional? Why isn't the administration functional? Because you have to have both genders evenly represented to create a functional group, because neither one is better or worse or right or wrong, but the voices of both need to be heard. But for 4,000 years, the mother's archetype has been suppressed, and we haven't heard the voice of the feminine. So at this point, our relationship to food is at a peak of dysfunctional. I don't go into supermarkets very often because I grow my own vegetables, and I also help to create a co-op in Boulder where I can go and shop and there are no dead animals and there's no junk food. But when I do go into a supermarket, it is rather surprising to see what is there. Fat-free eggs, low-fat cream, sugar-free sugar, oil-free oil, fat-free oil, and then fat-free potato chips. What is this? The shelves are filled with things that to my eyes do not appear edible. And I remember last summer with my niece and nephew, we were on the Shoshone Arapaho reservation in Wyoming and saw what extremely obese Native Americans were putting in their shopping baskets. Donuts, Campbell's soup, chicken from the battery farm. My eyes are like, 200 years ago, these people were still hunter-gatherers. Their whole diet was completely natural, and they didn't have food grains. These particular types of Indians didn't even use grains at all. They lived on meat and berries. Now look what they're putting in their basket. No wonder they have diabetes, strokes, heart disease, and they're weighing 2 or 3 times what they should be weighing. Their genetic code doesn't know what to do with what's in their shopping basket. But the brain of a hunter-gatherer, which is not just the brain of the Native American, but it's the brain of each and every one of us when we go into the supermarket. Our brain, for millennia, says when food's in front of you, get it. Right? So we go into the supermarket and there's all this food. Most of it's really, really bad for you. And somewhere in our mind says, this is your food. This is your only chance. You never know when you'll see food again. And we start grabbing all this strange stuff and we put it in our cart. And we go and we pay for it with our hard-earned money. And then we get sick. So it's really important that we can come to rehabilitate our relationship to food so that it's no longer dysfunctional, so that we're no longer relating to food out of our heads. We see this very much in people who have eating disorders, which is possibly a majority of women. In my experience, in my practice, possibly a majority of us have one kind of eating disorder or another. Either we don't eat enough, or we overeat, or we eat too many sweets, or in some way we're trying to manage our feelings about ourselves and our bodies through a dysfunctional relationship to food. And a lot of it's because we're trying to use our minds to relate to food instead of using what Ayurveda calls prajna. Prajna is our profound inner knowing. The root nya means wisdom. And you have jnana, which is a static form of wisdom that jnana is actually only possible in samadhi or in deep meditation. The mind has to come to a still point, and then there's this kind of wisdom. Then there's vijnana, which is bringing that jnana more out into the flow of your everyday life. And then there's prajna. Pra means coming forth. It's that which comes forth. It's practical wisdom. Prajna will tell us what to put in our shopping cart. Prajna will tell us what to put on our dinner plate, but we are not in touch with prajna. So you'll find that anyone with an eating disorder, and in fact, indeed, perhaps a majority of us, live very much between here and here. So somewhere between the nose and the top of the head is where we're conscious. Our eyes, our brains, and we don't necessarily really know how our body even feels. And if you look at what people are eating in any restaurant, or what people are putting in their supermarket baskets, I know that if I would eat that, my body would feel terrible. So it gives me an understanding that by and large we don't really know how our bodies feel. We don't really know what our bellies are telling us. We're not really listening. But we're trying to figure it out. We now need the Surgeon General to tell us what we should eat and how much of this. And there's a little label and it says it's got 100 of this, it's got 1,000 units of that, it's got this many RDAs of the other. When we lived for millennia as hunter-gatherers, there was no Surgeon General and there were no lists of RDAs. We just lived. We just ate. We didn't have to add things up, calculate things, count things, calculate calories. It's a very, very mental relationship to our food because we've become very distant from our own food. Now there are all these experts intervening between us and what we're going to eat, and it keeps changing because science keeps changing. Whereas a science like Ayurveda says that the true knowledge comes from not the past, but the original time that the sages entered and each one of us can enter. Science says the true knowledge is in the future because there's always going to be another scientist that will come and build on what we found out. So first of all, we were all told to eat low fat, right? Then surprise, surprise, it turns out that 1/3 of the population, 1/3, because there's the Ayurvedic, 1/3 of the population becomes seriously depressed on a low-fat diet. Could that not be our poor little vatas who become seriously depressed on a low-fat diet? So now suddenly a low-fat diet was recommended for everyone. Now, as we know in Ayurveda, no diet is recommended for everyone. There's always something different. First margarine. Butter's bad, then margarine's good, then margarine's bad, then butter's good, or it isn't good. Or you should have milk, or you shouldn't have milk, or milk is evil, or there are big ads saying got milk, because there's the milk marketing board, and then there's all the people that say milk is really bad for you. There are all these experts and all these marketing boards and all these medical people all intervening in us having to think about what goes on our dinner plate, as opposed to our ability to have prajna, and to be in our bodies, and to know, right now, this is what I need to eat. There was a time when I had done panchakarma, and Sadananda and I had just done our panchakarma and then our week of vegetable khichdi. We were doing some sajjana kramana, which is when you're reintroducing your normal diet gradually. And it was Sadananda's birthday, and the young people put on a surprise birthday party potluck. And they enthusiastically made eggplant sabji. And then this was served on my plate. So I wanted to be very polite to the young people who had prepared this. So I eat with my hands, which really, really helps with prajna. So I'd start putting my hand towards the eggplant, and my mind would say, eat up everything on your plate like your mommy told you, and you've got to be polite. My hands wouldn't pick up the eggplant. Or I would pick it up and I'd try to get it to my mouth, and it wouldn't get it to my mouth. Because my body's prajna said you can't possibly. On day 3 or 4 of some Sajjana Kramana, you can't eat spicy eggplant sabji. Being in touch with prajna, I actually couldn't do it. So that we all have that ability to know what we need to eat if we can retrain ourselves. That's why it's good when we start by following an Ayurvedic diet. To begin with, someone gives you a list. Or they say, actually, I try to not give people lists. With all deepest respect to the practitioners that give people food lists, I think it still helps us to stay in our heads. I usually give kind of general guidelines. If you're pitta, I say try to avoid the nightshades and the taste. I tell them which tastes to avoid and which tastes to favor, because I just find people get into doing it right with the lists. But to begin with, someone has to say, here's the way you should be eating. And after a while, the person's going to come back and say, you know what, I don't like basmati rice, I like brown rice. And then you have to say, well, then listen to your own body and eat what attracts you and try the brown rice. See how your own body feels with it. Now, maybe that was a mental idea. Some people believe that basmati rice is not a whole grain because they don't realize that when you open the husk, it's that pearly white color. They have an idea that it was once brown, like brown rice, but rice comes in many different colors. Maybe it's an idea in the head. Maybe it's what their body really needs at this time. But we want to retrain ourselves to get our own understanding of what to eat. Where does our food come from? That food prayer that I say before meals. May the earth be blessed that bore this food, and may they prosper who grew it. Having some sense of relating to where our food came from, how it was produced, and is there some holistic sense with this? You all know that there are inner city children who think that milk comes from cartons. There are many, many people alive in the world today who have not actually seen a cow, who have never been to a milking parlor and seen what happens to modern cows. Where does our food come from, and how do we relate to having a more holistic understanding of our food? And this is very important for our relationship to our bodies and the earth. I don't know if this is a useful thing to say in Las Vegas, because I think most of you live in small places. But do you have like community gardens or anything? You don't have any way to grow food? The very best thing that we can do for the environment is to grow our own vegetables. Because averagely, the food that you eat has been shipped an average of 1,500 miles. Now, to my mind, that's okay for a real export commodity. That maybe during when we really pass peak oil, we won't have export commodities. But to my way of seeing it, since Paleolithic times, the best flints from Grimes graves in Norfolk went all the way as far as Russia, and the salt from Siberia came all the way as far as Britain. It's okay to trade in something like cardamom that you can't grow anywhere else, that's a real export thing, but lettuce from Colombia? Does this make sense? It doesn't make any sense that we're shipping basic vegetables around the world, that we have to eat strawberries in January. It doesn't make any sense. So this idea that could we grow our own food? If we grow our own food, many less calories have gone into that food to produce that food. That food hasn't had to be shipped to us. it's not necessarily cheaper to grow our own food, because you have to pay for the seeds, and you have your time, which is valuable in the money equation, and you have your tools, and you have your water, and all the rest of it. But the quality of it is amazing. And just the fact that you grew this food in your own garden. Next best is to go to a farmer's market to get local produce. And a lot of people are now saying it's more important for the earth to buy local than to buy organic. Because organic is becoming industrialized. We're getting vast industrial organic farms. It's being taken over by Safeways and King Soopers and all these big companies. And so you're getting your 1,500-mile or 3,000-mile organic salad mix. I actually didn't eat salad all last winter. It was quite a big austerity for me. I like to eat salad. But every time I thought of how many miles the bag of salad mix had traveled, I couldn't do it. So I just kept waiting until spring would come and the lettuce would come up in the garden and I'd be able to go out and pick it. Buying local is very important. It supports our local economy, and the food has been shipped less far, and it's coming from our own bioregion. Next best is certainly thinking about having our food be organic. It's better for us, and it's better for the earth. It's very important for the earth, the organic farming methods, and the food actually has more nutrition. So just having a sense of, well, when we buy some food, thinking about what went into that. How far did it travel? How much petrochemicals were involved in terms of oil in producing that food? What contribution did what's in my salad bowl make to global warming? I guess California is not so far from Nevada, but it really seems pretty far from Colorado. And when you're thinking of that the salad bowl in New York comes from California in the summer and Colombia in the winter, of course, that's actually frightening. What are we doing? We're starting to have more awareness about our food being a part of the earth, about how it's produced, how it's grown, what went into it, where does it come from, what are we selecting, choosing foods that, again, our bodies actually need. We got to the point where we're eating for a lot of other reasons other than hunger and appetite. And again, that's a frightening thing. We're eating because we want a certain taste, we want to get very full, we want to feel comfortable, it's a social thing. There are many, many other reasons why we're eating other than nourishment. In fact, we've become disconnected from our sense of being nourished. In my years since I went to medical school in 1970, I've seen two kinds of malnutrition. When I was in East Africa, much more so even than in India, I saw malnutrition due to poverty. I saw children with kwashiorkor, their hair that should be black and curly is losing its curl and it's brownish or sometimes even almost blonde. Their skin that should be beautifully black becomes pale. Their bellies become big. Now, interestingly enough, there's an important anthropological reason why these children get kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor means the disease the first child gets when the second child is born, when that child is weaned, and they have to start eating ordinary food. Kwashiorkor has followed the introduction of corn around the world, because corn is extremely low in lysine, and it's the worst food grain we can possibly have as a staple. All right, in the Southwest, we have corn, but it was always paired with beans. You have the three sisters, beans, corn, and squash. And once you combine the three, you won't get kwashiorkor, you won't get blindness due to lack of vitamin A. It will all go together. But these people are just eating corn and bananas, and the children are really getting sick. And they're getting sick due to a world economy that has determined that Africa has to be poor. But then I've also seen in all my years of practice malnutrition in the midst of plenty. By and large, many, many people in America are malnourished. If you just think about the standard American diet, dry cereal with cold milk, which no one can digest cold milk, no one can digest corn combined with milk at the same time. Dry cereal with cold milk, with coffee, which leaches your body of nutrients, with orange juice, which is curdling the milk in your stomach. Okay. We've already caused, we've got a full belly and we've caused ourselves malnutrition. And then we're going to have lunch, and it's usually like a lump of meat and some frozen vegetable medley or something like that. Or maybe lunch is a sandwich. Maybe it's Subway. There's this person been going around the world promoting how they lost weight on Subway sandwiches because there are actually some vegetables in a Subway sandwich as opposed to McDonald's, which is just a lump of what you wouldn't actually call meat. There is no actual meat in a hamburger. That's why the first person that died of mad cow disease in England was a girl that lived on hamburgers, because it's cut so close to the bone. It's basically not muscle tissue. It's not what we would actually call, I'm sure, really meat. I hate to offend those of us here who are vegetarians by talking about meat, so making us think about it. But this hamburger is junk, and then what doesn't go there goes to your animal. And we really have to also think about what our companions eat, because we're making them eat diseased, downed, and dead animals. I don't want to talk about this a lot. There's not time, but go to my website and look at the pets page, and it will talk a lot about how to feed your animal, because we may be healthy eaters ourselves and sticking a bowl of toxic junk in the face of our beloved animal, and then not understanding why our dogs die at 8 or 10 years old and our cats are dying at 12, 16 when they're supposed to live 25 years, because we have no awareness of how they're eating either, and they're depending on us. So in America, we've got this starvation in the midst of plenty, because we're not choosing to eat the basic real food groups: whole grains, pulses, which in the American language I think are called legumes or legumes, depending on how you pronounce it, fruits, vegetables, healthy oils, and organic dairy products. That's essentially all we need to be eating. We want to eat all, and if you want to eat fresh foods, that's okay, but you have to really think about how is it raised, what was that animal's life like, what are you taking into your body. At least eat the free-range stuff. In Ayurveda, Ayurveda predates India's love affair with vegetarianism by many centuries, and does talk about eating meat, but recommends the wilder the better, because the wild food is leaner and has the natural composition. And when these animals are being confined in these terrible feedlots, you all understand what really happened, right, with the E. coli situation. They finally traced it to a feedlot, because when you feed corn to cattle, it changes their intestinal flora, and then they can get this toxic E. coli. But if they eat, because cows don't eat corn, if they can eat their natural food, that won't happen. How do we prepare it? When we've tried to pick out some healthy food for ourselves, what do we do with it? Nowadays, people don't eat, and family homes don't have a dining table. Well, we don't have a dining table at the ashram, but that's because our dining table is either our porch or our floor, because we sit on the ground and we eat with our hands in the Indian style. But if that's not your style, we need to have a dining table We need to have the family sit down together. And we need to actually take the time to cook. We need to take time to prepare our food. Increasingly, we're giving over the most important feature of our life to random people. When we're running into the fast food place to grab something to eat, what we're doing is giving the preparation of our food to an stressed out, exploited person, probably an immigrant, earning minimum wage, working 30 hours a week with no benefits, tiny tips, who hates their job and is doing everything in a terrible hurry. And that's the vibration that's going into our food. Even when we go to a restaurant, our food is being offered to us as a commodity that's bought and sold. If we go to a real restaurant, not a fast food, then maybe our food is being prepared in large part by a chef who has a salary and loves their job and enjoys preparing food for people. But we're still getting that food as a commodity. And when we eat in a restaurant also, they're thinking about what will sell rather than thinking about what's healthy for that person. So it has more salt, it has more fat, because fat sells. It's rarely organic. We do have our organic vegetarian restaurant that we've made in our co-op in Boulder, but most restaurants, the food is not organic. We've given over this crucial part of our life because we have essentially done away with mothers. It's been the backlash of feminism. Feminism too was kind of taken over and exploited to get women into the workforce and to eliminate the job description of a mother. Now, a mother is largely someone who devotes a significant portion of her time to the planning, shopping for, and preparation of food. Even if it's meat and two veg. My mother also didn't cook for us. She was a doctor, she was a feminist, but then we had a housekeeper who was a very good person and did devote her time to shopping, preparing the food, baking the apple pie, doing the whole thing. We've done away with mothers. So now either we've got to go and grab something in a restaurant, or we've got to go and grab a frozen dinner or something to microwave. That again is a commodity that someone else has prepared. So we need to come back to that sense of mothers, whether male or female. Upasani Maharaj said the most important way to transform the culture in this time is for men to learn to bake the bhakri. Bhakri is the bread that they eat, the flat bread that they eat in Maharashtra. When men can learn to also be mothers, when men can learn to prepare food and to serve it with love and with energy. He said the culture's gone the wrong way to putting women into the category of men and eliminating mothers, not in the sense of course, women are giving birth, but in the sense of having the job of nurturing, tending a hearth, a home, a kitchen, preparing food, nourishing people. That now both men and women need to be able to come back to hearth and home and food and nurturing. And he said that's what's going to transform the culture, is when we regain that ability to relate to our food with love. And in India, the food is actually served with the hand of the server. And Upasani Maharaj said that's really important because the right hand of a woman, and if he trains himself, the right hand of a man too, produces a nectar. It's a nurturing vibration that goes into your food. So, of course, with all our concerns about sanitation and so on, I still think you can, because it is a vibration, you can transmit it through the ladle or the serving spoon. But having that sense of really getting back to being able to prepare food that's filled with love. I can really tell the difference. I enjoy eating my own food because that's the one way where I can get nourished with the love that I put into it. Because it feeds me too. It feeds everyone else and it feeds me as well. love is the added ingredient that makes our food truly nourishing. When it's filled with mother love, and again, that person may or may not be a physical mother, and they can as well be a man as a woman. I feel very nurtured. Last time I went away, when I went to the NAMA conference, and I got home for late lunch on Monday, and Sadananda had worked so hard, and he was so excited, because he had missed me for 3 whole days, and he had made food. This being a mother, right? The whole long flight, a terribly long flight, really, from New York, and then the shuttle to Boulder and all the rest of it. And there's the mother in the form of Yogi Sadananda serving the food with so much love. So it can be a man or a woman, but we have to bring back the mother in terms of love and food. And then, how do we eat it? Do we eat it standing up over the sink so we don't have to wash a dish and the crumbs will just go straight down the sink? I've been guilty of that too. It's a great place to eat a mango, honestly. It's over the sink. Do we eat it standing over the sink? Do we eat it in the car? I remember at a conference I went to in Orlando, Mark saying, it's better to eat a steak sitting down than khichdi in the car. I don't really agree with him. I don't think there's any excuse for ever eating a cow, because that's the mother. And the 300-year-old yogi, the Arya Baba, and Bhaktivedanta Swami both said there'll never be peace on earth as long as cows are killed, because we're killing the mother. But anyway, aside from the fact that I don't think there's any excuse whatsoever for eating a piece of dead cow, that's my personal view of it. Are we eating it in the car on the way to work? Are we eating it on our bicycle? Do we not have a dining table, even if it's a piece of floor? It's how we eat our food is the most important sacrament. For those of us that do have a Christian background, which possibly could be everyone in the room, and for those of us too that have a Jewish background, this is the most important sacrament. What is the Mass? Eating some bread. It's really about eating some bread properly, with full awareness. Okay, it's become a bit idolized with keeping pieces of bread in a special tabernacle and bowing before it and things that might be a little extreme. But the point is, food is sacred. Our life depends on bread. As they say in the Jewish mystical teachings, that bread, that every grain is the life germ. Within every grain of wheat or rice is the potential of thousands of acres of that plant, because it's the germ that can propagate another plant with many ears of corn, and another and another and another. You see what I'm saying? So that wheat has sacrificed its basic life potential to be ground up for us to eat. So that's why in Jewish tradition, the bread has to be said very sacredly with a very special blessing, because every little being in every ear of corn, every life spark, longed to be eaten with a prayer. And there's a Hasidic story about this. A young Hasid's been working hard. He comes in, grabs a piece of bread. He says a quick, starts eating the bread. And the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, says, wait a moment. What are you doing? She says, every ear of corn was growing, that went into that bread, was growing with the prayer, may I be eaten with a bracha, with a blessing by someone who will elevate my sparks. And you just mumble, chomp, chomp, chomp. You can't do it that way. Well, we owe the grains in our food a debt. We owe the vegetables a debt, that is to prepare them with love, to eat them with a prayer. And ideally to offer our food. Put up a picture of whoever you like, whether it's Jesus, whether it's the Dalai Lama, whether it's Mary, whether it's a guru. Put up a picture of whoever you respect. You have a plate that no one's eaten of. take out some of the food that you cooked. We do this every time. We have a little altar right there in our kitchen, and we have all the Ma's. We have Anandamai Ma, we have Godavari Ma, we have Amachi, we have Karunamai, we have Lakshmi. We always offer our food to the mother. We have a special silver plate. We take out the first portion of the food. We put it on the altar right there in the kitchen, because if you make it too difficult to do, you may omit doing it in a rush, right? Make it really easy. We say a prayer to the Guru, to the mother. We all have a little bit of that food. It's just the same as Holy Communion. Don't want to offend anyone, but it's that food has just been eaten by God, by the mother. We have a little bit of that food as Mahaprasadam, and then we take our food. Really having the sense of sitting down and eating our food with sacredness. Because the Shabbat, the Passover, the Mass, all of our rituals and ceremonies basically are about seeing how sacred your food is. A fire sacrifice is about offering grains, burning food grains. Because what is more precious? You know, you go out and you spend a bunch of money and you buy a bunch of rice, you chuck it into a fire, and you don't get to eat it. It's all about how sacred our food is, that the gods want to eat that too. The most important fire sacrifice is the one we do 3 times a day, when we chew our food and we offer it to our sacred digestive fire. So that means, I always like to say, we don't throw trash on the sacred fire. Don't throw trash on your sacred digestive fire. Don't throw junk food. Don't throw trash. And it's trash if it's more than you can eat. If you're eating it up, because otherwise it would go in the garbage or the compost bucket, that's trash. Don't throw trash on your sacred digestive fire. And don't just chuck stuff. When we're offering to a fire, we do it with prayer. We have to eat with some kind of awareness that, like Krishna said, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamazrita Pranapan Samayukta Pachamyanam Chaturvidam. I am the fire that consumes the food. And working through the union of the prana, apana, and samana, I nourish all the living beings. So where does Krishna live in us? It's true that he lives in our heart as the flame of awareness. But he also says that he lives in our belly as the flame of digestion. And that he is the only eater of all food. Whatever our tradition that we're honoring, it's all really coming to show us that eating is a sacred act. Our body is a temple where our food is the offering that's consumed by the sacred fire. With prayer, with thanks. We can't do that standing up at the sink. We can't do that in the car. We have to do that by sitting down and eating. I've had to really work with some of my patients then, and there are some jobs in Denver where it's unprofessional to have a lunch break. It's unprofessional to do anything other than eat at your computer. But eating is outlawed in our office, partly because we were donated a state-of-the-art keyboard, and I don't especially want crumbs in it or almond butter spilled all over it, but also because this is an ashram. We don't eat in our office at our computer. That's not where we eat. We eat at our table, which in our case is the floor, sitting down together, preferably in silence, with prayer, with awareness. Coming back to the mother. But it does really mean we have to come back to honoring food. The mother is the one, our birth mother is the one. For most of us, there are those who've been adopted and didn't get breastfed by their birth mother, but essentially for the majority of human beings, our mother is the one who gave us our first food. The food is of the body of the mother. It comes from our mother who bore us. It comes from our mother, the earth. It comes from our mother, the cow, in the form of dairy products. We want to really honor that food as a communion with the mother. And
Thank you for tuning in to Ayurveda and Spirituality with Alakananda Ma. We hope today's exploration has ignited a spark of curiosity and insight within you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. For more enlightening discussions and practical wisdom on Ayurveda and spirituality, subscribe and join our Facebook group, Alundi Ayurveda. To allow us to continue sharing valuable content, consider donating to Alundi Ashram. The links will be in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk the path of Ayurveda with grace and embrace the light of spiritual wisdom in your journey.
Trayambakam yajamahe Sukha